on Nova Legends podcast. I have our off-season update on Northern Virginia football with my two resident experts, Jason Sterling from the Loudon area and Brian Westhoff, who's the Prince William guy. We're gonna once again talk about what's going on in the football world. Hey guys, good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having us back.
Great seeing you, Joey.
Oh, of course. First of all, before we get to the news, I don't think we've talked since the championship game where Madison beat. Madison lost to Oscar Smith. Don't know whether you guys got a chance to watch the game or not, but if you did, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, what an amazing game! Like I caught it on NFHS. I didn't see it live. I know you were down there. That had to be amazing to be in person. But man, that was definitely, I think, surprised some people. I think other people knew Madison was going to put up a fight, but that ending to that game was ridiculous. It was exciting.
It was a very special night.
Yeah.
Heck of a football game. I mean, nip and tuck the whole way. I mean, I bet there's a lot of Fairfax coaches that are happy to see Dominic Nicely graduate here in the spring, so they don't have to game plan for him next year. But hats off to Oscar Smith. You know, they hung in there. That obviously that celebration penalty hurt Madison at the end where they had to force to go for two, which made it a long 2-point conversion. But a great game by two great teams.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I love the comment from Madison's coach, how, hey, go with the guys that got us here, put it in our best players' hands, and let's see what happens. I thought it was a great call, so they just fell short.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I watched the game there, I didn't know how close that pass was to being completed. When you watch the replay, you couldn't say he should have made the catch, but he definitely could have made that catch. So they weren't too far away from winning the state championship. What a team! Great point about Nicey's gone. They had two generations of the Dredge brothers. So they've had world-class running backs, or at least definitely college class running backs for the last 4 or 5 years. I know they plan on promoting the fullback from this year, number 8. I can't think of his name. He's going to be the tailback next year. He did a good job, so we'll see how he does. I would not count Madison out, especially because Overton is moving on. Let's talk about Coach Overton from Hayfield. Hayfield took themselves out of the running in the postseason. It's hard to understand exactly why, but there were some texts revealed between the AD who had Monty Frintz, who had left the school by the time they were in the playoffs, I believe. But anyway, there were some texts that reveal they talked about the homeless exemption for getting kids eligible, and I guess he had expressed some kind of excitement for getting transfers, and so Overton. I interviewed him, and for all I knew, they were talking about getting the penalty lifted, the ban lifted for the next year. So, but then all of a sudden, he signs with the St. James as their coach. St. James is a huge sports complex in Northern Virginia. There's others around the country. This is a kind of a trend of combining online schooling or tailored schooling with world-class sports and instruction. This looks like this is a way to go. I know with the Trump administration in place, we're going to see more tax incentives for non-public schools to do things like that. So anyway, it was interesting. This is probably one of the best jobs in the country. I understand his salary is unbelievable just to coach football. Happy for him. This job is tailor-made for him. What did you guys think about this news when you first heard? Were you kind of surprised as I was?
I mean, I was, Julian. Obviously, there was, a lot going on at Hayfield. I mean, we wasn't a day that went by when, something new came out about that situation, an unfortunate situation. But I did not have the St. James Performance Academy on my radar as somewhere that he might end up. Frankly, I didn't know too much about it. They're brand new. I think they just opened, I believe, last August, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, it's an entire youth, sports and performance enhancement along with schooling complex. So, you're right that there's a huge trend for that in the United States. And, the St. James won't be the last one that opens, around this area. And there's tons of these that are out there. So it's interesting. I mean, he's going to, obviously chartered to come in and guide, growth of football, within that program. I think they've got some flag programs that are going on right now within the academy. and different things like that. So I guess my big curiosity is, how quickly can you develop something and then get some type of schedule that you can go out and play either against private schools or maybe even a public school that's got an opening, things like that. I mean, the fall is going to be coming up on us quickly. I don't know if they'll be able to field a team and even put a schedule together. Not sure. So that's really where my curiosity lies right now. If that's something how fast that can happen, and what types of competitive environments will they be in, scrimmages or benefit games, or can they actually get some type of regular season modified schedule in there? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I got to imagine that that's probably been in the works for a little while. So I got to imagine that there's somewhat of a schedule or plan for this shortcoming this next year. The one thing that was interesting too, I saw, and this is down in your area, Jason, Obi Woods had left Virginia Academy and going to, and I can't remember the name of it. It sounded a very similar type model to St. James, a Loudon Academy or something like that. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a trend that's starting to happen, but it certainly created a buzz. I mean, if you're over Twitter, I saw nonstop postings on different events and open houses and promotion on St. James and everything. It's definitely exciting.
It's a beautiful facility. I've not been there, but I've heard people that have driven by when it was being constructed and those types of things. And it's definitely got investment dollars behind it for sure. This isn't one of these fake ESPN, made for TV things that's not out there. This is real, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly, because I mean, he's a brand name right now, as we know, and he will attract kids that want to come in and try and go play at the collegiate level. And I think that's what kids are going to look for, parents are going to look for, to have him develop their skill set and maturity to be able to play at the next level.
Yeah, I think they tried one sport already this year. I think they're already underway with one sport. I forgot what it was. I know the company that's managing the education portion does this for like a Bethesda soccer group, and they do it nationwide as well. So I think the pieces have been there for a while, but not just at St. James. My son used to play soccer there, and it is great. There are questions whether the middle school is going to be online or they're going to provide middle school education, because I know Coach Overton is in charge of overseeing that as well. I know the girls' flag might be involved. I don't know. I know in the past people have said that St. James is not the kind of place that waives a lot of tuition for their people. Like, you're going to have to pay to get in. It's not. I understand they don't give a lot of scholarships, but who knows? Maybe Coach Overton has worked on that. I know it's got to be some kind of profit motive for an entity like St. James, but I mean, he has a staff of like 10 assistant coaches. The whole thing seems, really well staffed, and it looks really well funded. And I know they're calling around different Virginia private schools already trying to get games for next year. It'll be interesting to see if kids want to come. I don't think it's a given that all kids are going to want to go to a private school like that with no tradition. But I know Coach Overton has quite a draw with kids.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's going to make it work, it's going to be Coach Overton. So I don't think you kind of invest in this without getting a coach like that to kind of lead it. The interesting thing too, you mentioned the staff. He's got a loaded staff. I mean, a lot of his staff from Hayfield, but you also had like former head coaches like John Robinette from Forest Park join as
he did?
on staff. Yeah. I saw it was I think Corbeck's coach for a position coach for Coach O. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
I think the location too in Springfield
is
critical, right? That's sort of the crux of being able to gather the Fredericksburg people from Fredericksburg North, so Prince William, Stafford, but yet still keep, your Fairfax County ties, your Loudoun County ties, Alexandria, Arlington, maybe DC. So you're not so far on the extreme where geographically someone's going to be sitting in traffic for 2 hours to try and get somewhere. I think, where they're at will help a lot to be able to draw from a larger pool of potential, parents and kids that want to invest in and send their sons and daughters there.
Yeah, there's a basketball academy called Gillen Academy. I think it's Gillen. This might be the one in Springfield, I think, because there's one right by Bryan and Prince William that's kind of sprouted up. It might be Bethel Academy or something. I get confused. But anyway, they were online the other day bragging that the average GPA on the team is like 4.0 or something like that. And it's just a basketball school. So, it's, I hopefully that's true. And the kids are getting great education, but you do kind of wonder about all these the circumstances. I know that St. James is a first class organization, and I know Overton cares about his kids. So I don't think we have to worry about that much. But it is interesting. I felt like in the middle of this Hayfield situation for a long time, in that I was getting blamed from one side, being on Overton's side and defending him a lot. And I do really like Coach Overton. If I had a kid who played football, and thank goodness I don't, I would love for him to coach him. That being said, there are people saying I wasn't doing enough to expose folks who are going after him or whatever. I feel like I was taking flack from both sides for defending Overton and also for attacking the Hayfield thing. And our Facebook groups. I know Jason is wise enough not to be on Facebook. It just becomes a ground of Hayfield adoration and Hayfield attack. Nonstop. It's all it is. And we have 30, 40 other schools in Loudon, Fairfax, Prince William, Arlington, Alexandria. Love to talk about those athletes as well. All we talk about are things that Overton has done, good and bad, things that their kids have done, good and bad. That's it. Whenever I would write something about Madison, it was attacked by pro Hayfield people sometimes. So I felt like everything was getting about Hayfield. But I think what this does, it's a great opportunity for Coach Overton, and he deserves it. But it also kind of returns the high school situation to, at least in Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, to where it was before Coach Overton came up here. Obviously, freedom was always waiting in the backdrop after whatever Fairfax County team would survive the playoffs. But I think things are probably going to go back to a little normal, and St. James is going to be something a little bit different. Obviously, they're going to try to attract some kids, high achieving kids that are playing locally, but it's a different type of circumstance than the regular 6C, 6D, and actually 6B football that we've been covering. So,
Go ahead.
Agreed, Julian.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the Facebook thing, it cracks me up because it basically mimics the political environment right now. You're either on one side of the aisle or the other. And what I found hysterical in relation to you, Julian, was when you first kind of started engaging on high school football and talking about Coach Overton. You were very critical about some of the running the score up and everything, but you saw everything through kind of a level-headed kind of mindset of looking at things and looking at the facts and evaluating it and things like that. And that's not common, right? You're either on one side or the other. So it's definitely created a ton of drama the last year plus. So.
It's great. I mean, it's great for business in terms of clicks and looks and stuff, but it's a little bit much. I think this is probably a great situation for everybody, maybe except for the Fairfax County Times. Jason, were you gonna comment?
Yeah, I just the whole situation. You can break it down into, if we were able as a society to break it down into football and rules, it would have been totally different. It became a personal attack on whoever said whatever, whenever, and that's what you hate to see that. And again, I think Brian's right. It mimics, our world today, unfortunately. So ironically, this week, the VHSL executive committee met, I think it was on Tuesday. And one of the primary topics, as you could imagine, is around transfers and how to get their arms around that. Now, maybe you can say they're a day late and a dollar short, trying to figure this out, but certainly coming off the Hayfield situation, there was a lot, from what I understand, those meetings, there was a lengthy amount of time spent around what do we do as the governing organization of the public high schools to make sure there are real clear rules, regulations, and guidelines that, all schools can live up to. And, the right answer is going to be very hard to find. I can tell you that, because there probably isn't a perfect answer there. And, but something needs to be done. I mean, unfortunately, the VHSL, as we know, they were put under that same shining spotlight that everybody else was, and, exposes a lot. And I think shows that, there were holes in the plans and things like that. So at some point it does need to be shored up, or, public high school sports, are going to go this way, and the continuation of the St. James's are going to rise. So you're going to see this paradigm shift, and it's already started. And for folks that have their kids in public education, you would hope that there'd be something there to stabilize that a little more. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely crazy times. I was at a game last night. I was up at Tuscarora watching Tuscarora and Heritage. Great matchup, great gym. And I was talking to a parent and his kid. They live in the Tusky district, but they just changed the districts because I guess they built up the area right around Loudoun County. So more kids from there are going to Loudoun County, and they're moving some kids to Heritage. I mean, so he said to me, "Yeah, we could have stayed if we could have gotten him into the ROTC program. And he could have stayed, but he didn't want to do that." And so I was just like, "Well, that's the first time I've ever heard that." And I guess in Loudoun, if the school's not over capacity, you can go wherever you want. But if it's at capacity, then you have to have a program to send you there. And then we talked about one of the other kids on the team had transferred back. And one of the teams had transferred back. He couldn't play because if you transfer back, then you have to sit out a year. And I was just, the whole thing is just a mess. And this is just Loudoun County. I'm sure every district has rules that are contemplated not just with sports in mind, but with education in mind, and with band in mind, with drama in mind. So, can we get all the schools? I know I was talking to an Oscar Smith parent, and they were telling me, well, we don't, or maybe it was a Maury parent, we don't have a hard time getting kids to transfer here because we have low-income housing, we have middle-class housing right by the school. So if they want to come and transfer here, they can just move here, and people have no problem doing that in Hampton Roads. So I don't know how they're going to get this whole state on some kind of consistent type of rules where all the jurisdictions differ in terms of how they admit kids into their schools. So
great. It's a great point. We always look at it, and I think unfairly, through either a football or basketball lens. And, there's a lot more. There's a lot of other sports activities, housing you mentioned. If the only houses around your school are 7-figure houses, it's going to be tough for a lot of parents to do something in that area. So it's a very, very complicated situation, with a lot of other things that are out there. So
it was always great for Stonebridge because Stonebridge has some really nice condos close, and they could always wealthier parents could always buy a condo in the Stonebridge area if there was going to be an issue. Brian, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, it's also interesting how it's kind of tracking what we're seeing in the college ranks too. I mean, college is kind of chaos as well. So, and trying the NCAA trying to get their arms around rules and regulations, whether it's transfer or NIL or whatever it is. So it's definitely shaking things up, across all the way down to the high school ranks.
Yeah. Well, we had a Moby Dick moment. Captain Ahab, Fairfax County Times, caught their white whale, and Overton stepped down from Hayfield. So, I kind of thought this whole thing was going to die down. I mean, they weren't able to participate in the postseason this year, maybe even next year. Overton is no longer going to be at Hayfield. So the story is gone. Well, after this happened, there was a scathing story in the Fairfax County Times about Overton and Hayfield, and also the negative folks on Facebook kept the attack up. And I was like, wow, everyone seemed to get what they wanted. If Overton got some publicity from being too aggressive for recruiting, that actually probably impressed St. James. We want a guy like that. Maybe it got him more money. It was kind of like a win-win for everybody. And I just felt like even after that happened, everybody wasn't happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they love the drama. That's what it is. I mean, it's they want to continue to have that drama, the debates and everything. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on to Coach Pannoni at South County. Well, so I heard he was fired, but I'm not sure. This is just media reports, and then because the only reason I heard that is because there's a petition to keep him there. So there was no reason given to why he was fired. So still that audio that we heard from that conference call regarding the relationship between Coach Overton and his players, and it was kind of drawn an analogy between some of the players, whoever was talking to Coach, that he'd had with players years ago at another school, which some people had attributed to Coach Pannoni. But again, It's never been authenticated officially, but he was let go for some reason. Now, this is at the same time when we have all these high schools that need coaches. We have Mount Vernon, their coach moved on. Hayfield, there's an opening. Brentsville, I believe there's an opening. I think Colgan's opening may have been filled. I think Forest Parks may have been filled, but there's Gainesville. There's others that I'm missing here. There's a lot of we need head coaches. Pannoni is a guy that's won state championships, generally has the respect of his peers. For all I know, he's an extremely well liked guy. His daughter is a very successful soccer coach at South County, won a state championship there as well. So I don't know where that situation is. Anyway, so it seems like we're losing a great coach at a time when we're having a hard time retaining great coaches. So it seems to be unfortunate, but that audio was never explained. It was never denied. It was never apologized for. It just kind of sat there for months, and I think a lot of folks thought maybe it was just going to go away and we go back to coaching. This is the first I heard about it in months. I'm not sure about you guys. Have you heard anything about it? What was your guys' reaction when you saw the news that there was this petition out to get to keep Coach Pannoni at South County as its football coach?
Yeah, I did like you, Julian. I think that story had sort of taken a back seat for a while, and then obviously either his, termination that occurred recently, or let go pending further information that they were going to look into. When that hit, and then of course his, to a person, his players rallied around very vocally. I think they staged a walkout, I believe, earlier in the week from classes. Got some pretty good media attention around that. Some videos of the kids, supporting him, and I'm not surprised. I mean, he's been a longstanding coach there for a long time, and I think his kids thoroughly enjoyed, his leadership, his guidance, playing for him. I think bigger picture, and you talked about, you probably listed 8 to 10 openings, right? Within Prince William and Fairfax and a few other counties around here. Being a head coach right now, particularly of a football program, is extremely hard. It is. There are, and again, I'm looking back as, just comparing this 10, 15 years ago. I mean, social media dominates everything, right? You cannot make one small misstep without a large fraction of people coming at you very hard. I think the rules and regulations, the paperwork, you talk to coaches like that, I think their hearts are, hey, I just want to develop these kids. I want to coach. I want to teach them things, and I want them to go on to become better, constituents for what they want to represent in their lives, whether they go on to play football or basketball at the next level, or they don't. Did they learn something? Are they becoming better adults? There's so much pressure now with these coaches to make sure everything is perfect. I don't even think half these coaches can start practice until they have a 30-minute seminar on, the anti-vaping, or the fundraising committee that has to be set up and led by your captains that has to happen this Saturday, but the team mom's out of the country. So, he has to run it. There's so much other things and noise that is not football related. I think that is taking a toll on a lot of these longstanding coaches. In my personal opinion, I think you're seeing some of the resignations or coaches that are leaving positions as a result of that. I think it's just become too much for them. And, the amount of time that they used to be able to spend with the family, that's completely wiped out. So it's tough. It's really hard right now, I think, to be a high school coach, have to still work a regular job, for income, and yet try and give the number of hours that you need to be successful and to help your the kids that you're coaching along the way. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in regards to Coach Pannoni, Julian, you can't leave those type of comments not acknowledged, right? You can't just let them sit there and not acknowledge them and either apologize or talk about them or whatever. So it was interesting to see the petition, and there was no acknowledgement of that audio at all, right? And you just can't have that in a position of a head football coach that is coaching 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old young men. You just can't have that. And I saw the word accountability kind of in the statement and everything. And right there, you have to be accountable. And Coach Pannoni, from everything I hear, fantastic coach, great man, lots of impact he's had on the youth. But sounds like you made a mistake, and you kind of have to address that, right? And that's what I kind of found interesting, that everybody just kind of ignored that and brushed that to the side, right? So putting that aside, I think the coaching kind of dynamic across Northern Virginia, it's exactly what Jason said. I've heard it countless times from different coaches that have stepped down, that it is a complete grind. It's a 365-day-a-year job, and a lot of the job is way more than just football. I mean, you're dealing with parents are way more vested in their kids' interests and activities than ever before, whether it's academics, athletics, whatever it is. So the demands there are way bigger than when, all of us grew up, right? So right there you have, I think, the regulations and things you have to deal with, and you end up becoming more of an administrator than an actual head football coach that is trying to develop, kids and teach them the game and teach them life and things like that. So that's why you see a lot of these coaches, the head coaches, are stepping down, and you see them still staying in football as assistant coaches because they just want to do the X's and O's. They want to have that whistle on the field and coach football, not deal with all the headaches. So it'll be interesting because you're seeing a lot of the positions filled too with first-time head coaches. And, I think it's going to be a learning curve for a lot of those first-time head coaches, not necessarily on the football side, but all the non-football things. You're talking about dealing, if you have a roster of, let's say, 70, 80 kids, that's 70 or 80 vested parents that you probably have never had any experience whatsoever dealing with, right? So that right there is a challenge, I think, that a lot of the young coaches are going to have to learn and kind of cross that learning curve.
Yeah, there is a learning curve, and whether or not people are going to have enough time or patience to actually approach that curve is an open question. With Pannoni, the comments were so terrible, but everyone makes mistakes. It's a forgiving society, and I think his good work would have been taken in context. Maybe you can argue in this day and age, and I know the current politics with Trump's trying to turn around kind of like this social conscience that we've learned to adopt over the last couple generations. Maybe you can argue it wouldn't have mattered, but I do think an apology may have made a difference. Do you guys think it would have made a difference if he would have taken ownership of the comments, if he didn't indeed make them, if he would have taken ownership and apologized? Could it have made a difference?
I mean, Brian talked about that at the very beginning of his piece there. I do, and I know it's not easy, right? It's a very humbling position to have to come out and say, hey, I just screwed something up. I said something I shouldn't have. I was emotional. I let my emotions get a hold of me. That's not how I've lived my life, my career, as I look on and reflect on it, it wasn't appropriate. That's tough to do. I think we've probably all been in spots, maybe not to that degree, where you've had, hey man, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Whether that's personal, work related, what have you. I think the quicker you do that today, because you're right, if something festers, people start formulating opinions around it, and start putting you in a bucket of being a really, really, really bad person. And, that may not be the case at all with Jeremy. He probably, my gut feeling, he said something absolutely that he shouldn't have said if it was him. And, I think to come out quickly, as humans, we want to give people second and third chances. And I think most of us be willing to do that in a normal environment. So I think it could have helped Julian for sure.
And Brian, I'm sorry if I missed that, but you do think he could have stayed if he would have apologized?
I don't know if it would have affected the end outcome, but it certainly wouldn't have hurt, right? Like I think you have to kind of get out there and admit and, hey, I made a mistake, and who knows how that would have affected things. But I think without that, the administration for South County and Fairfax County Public Schools, you forced them in a corner. You can't just leave that unaddressed. So yeah.
Well, I wrote an apology. If he didn't indeed said it, I wrote an apology for the situation. And I want you guys to I want to get you guys' opinion. And actually, Jason just gave a really nice one off the cuff there, but I wrote this one down. A few months ago, a recording surfaced in which I made harmful generalizations about different socioeconomic groups and said hurtful things about the coach at our rival Hayfield. I want to take full responsibility for my words and offer a sincere apology to anyone that was hurt by them, especially Coach Overton. While it's painful to know that this conversation was recorded without my consent, I recognize that that doesn't excuse the content of what was said. I acknowledge that I may have criticized Coach Overton's approach to recruiting, but that does not justify the comments I made about him. I'm always passionate about advocating for my team and players, but I understand that this can never come at the expense of others, including players and coaches from other schools. Throughout my career, I have worked with many players from disadvantaged backgrounds, and seeing the positive impact I've had on their lives has been one of the greatest rewards. Nonetheless, I sincerely apologize for my words and hope we can move forward in a spirit of mutual respect. So that was my words. I wrote that. Do you guys think that that kind of apology may have had some weight in the situation?
I absolutely, my personal opinion, it would. I mean, that was well said. First of all, Julian, remind me if I ever say something offensive to anybody, hire Julian.
Julian as our PR person.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't forget, guys, I'm a lawyer, even though I haven't practiced.
Yeah.
I know.
I haven't practiced 30 years.
I know. I'll keep you on retainer, Julie. Yeah, listen, I certainly think, the quicker, the better, because again, in this day and age, social media, it can continue to be talked about forever, and it will stay out there. Even if that recording's deleted, somebody's got it, it can be played again 4 years from now. Right. So that's the issue today, maybe versus what it was before. Everything, once something happened in the news cycle, it went away after 2, 3, 4 days, and you would have to redevelop it through conversation. Now you just hit your phone again, and there it is. So I do think the quicker you can get out in front of something like that, because look, mistakes are going to happen. This was a very heated, volatile, crazy summer of what happened there, and I'm sure there were frustrated coaches all around, that felt that they're, being competitive was almost going to be impossible. But there's ways to handle that. There's ways to take that. And, in an unfortunate recorded conversation, you're going to have to fess up and say, hey, I shouldn't have done that. So I think the apology early is critical in a situation like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Right. You have something else?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think it would have went a long way. I mean, right from the start, it would have went a long way instead of kind of just leaving it unsaid and not even addressing it and just kind of sweeping it under the rug and everything. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So yeah, it would have went a long way for sure.
The funny thing is, Coach Overton is the kind of guy that would have publicly accepted his apology. He's that kind of guy. He's a really nice, forgiving guy, and I know him. I think he would have accepted the apology if it would have been sincere. I think Overton could have helped. I don't want to speak for Coach Overton. I don't know. You never mentioned that to me, but my guess is
the one thing too, Julian. At the end of the day, though, Coach Pannoni was let go because of his comments. It was not let go because he was a whistleblower, quote unquote. And this had nothing to do with Hayfield and Overton. Yes, the comments were about that. But at the end of the day, it was his comments, and that's why he was let go. And I just find it amazing that a Fairfax Times article doesn't even address that there was an audio, and that's the main reason why they had to let him go. So,
yeah, their argument was a little bit circular. They basically said, "We love Coach Pannoni; he's been great. We trust him. We love him." Well, that argument didn't work well for Hayfield. They love Coach Overton. They trust him. He's been great. But no, that's not enough. So their argument was kind of circular. It didn't make any sense. And it was basically scapegoating, once again, scapegoating Hayfield. And I don't think anyone was convinced. Well, let's go to the coaching jobs and the coaching vacancies. And some of them have been filled. What are some of the ones that have been? I mean, first of all, there's some great jobs out there, including Hayfield and Gainesville. Tremendous jobs. Colgan. I know, Brian has ideas about Colgan and Forest Park because you're near there. But some of these jobs I know Lauren White, a great coach from Brentsville, is taking a job. What are some of the jobs that have already been filled?
Yeah, so there's 5 openings in Prince William County. 4 of them have been filled. So the only one left is Brentsville is open. So Forest Park got filled by Brandon Benson. He was an assistant at Forest Park, defensive backs coach for a few years, played at Hilton, played at Bucknell, so Prince William County guy, young, first time head coach. So he's going to have to get across that learning curve, but he's been in the system, so they kept it in house. So that's Forest Park. Colgan hired Coach White from Brentsville, so that's a great hire. I mean,
Great hire,
he's
yeah.
got deep Prince William County ties. He grew up here, played at Garfield, has coached at Patriot. He's coached at Osmond Park. So he knows the county very well. So that's a great hire. Hilton filled it with Coach Cologne. He was an assistant at Hilton last year as well. So they kept it in-house. I think he coached at OP and has coached youth football in the county for a while. So again, a Prince William County guy, but the first time head coach again. So I think Coach White might be the only one that has been filled in Prince William County that has head coaching experience. And then Gainesville just recently got filled as well in the last week. So Trey Cage, he was the defensive coordinator for the last few years for Gainesville, and also a defense coordinator for Battlefield years ago. So again, kept it in house. I'm hearing it's a great hire. I don't know Coach Cage personally, but I know he's got a lot of respect throughout the county and in that school. So hopefully he'll continue things that they've got going there. So
That's a great pedigree where he's coached. Lauren White won a state championship somewhere, didn't he?
So he made it to the states, like, what was it, 3 years in a row, I believe, something like that, the state semis. First time ever in the school's history. So he really got that program going. I ran into the Phoebus buzzsaw every time.
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he got a lot of things going there. So he should do well. I saw some comment in some of the Facebook groups that they had something like 50 kids the first week of their off-season workouts attending every day. So he's going to have a buzz there for sure.
Colgan's one of the biggest schools in the state.
Yeah.
It's got a wonderful demographic for football because you got wealthy kids, you got some ethnic kids, some tough kids. You got a little bit of everything with Colgan. So I think it's a mix with the right coach.
Yep.
Colgan could be a football powerhouse, couldn't it? If it's the right
Yeah, and
situation?
Coach Scott took over a program. He left. I think he's going to be coaching out of Colonial Forge, an assistant down there. But he took over a program that had lost, I think it was something like 25 games in a row or something, and had a lot of kids transferring out and things. So that was a rebuild effort for him. So he spent, I guess it was 3 or 4 years kind of getting that program at least back to respectability and getting some momentum back. And so I think Coach White is taking something on that isn't it hasn't been totally struggling the last few years. He's going to take over what Coach Scott kind of started getting going again. So yeah, it's a great platform, I think, on the eastern side of Prince William to build a football program. So
I think they'll be able to compete with the Gainesvilles and the Patriots in the Battlefield pretty quickly. That's my guess, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree with you. That's a great job done at Colgan. I think too. I think it's ripe for growth in football, and Lauren White brings a lot of experience there. The Gainesville one's very interesting. Daniel Bruton, who stepped down. He was sort of known as, hey, I want to be the first coach at some schools. He had that history, and I too also do not know Trey Cage personally, but to me, that's another school that has got a lot of up and coming potential, relatively new, just a few years now after being open. So it'll be interesting to see. I saw also out in Culpeper, I think Eastern View has an opening there. Their head coach stepped down to spend more time with his family. There's quite a few. And I think you mentioned a couple. Obviously, the South County thing, we'll have to see how that plays out. Could obviously be an opening here. It is technically, I guess it is now. I don't know if they're accepting applicants, but Mount Vernon, some others. So just a lot of switching. And to your point, about some of these head coaches moving into assistant roles to maybe take a little bit of that pressure off, or maybe lessen the work hours a little bit. I think you're seeing a lot of that. Coach Mickey Thompson, I don't know if you guys had heard, but he's an assistant now over at Independence.
Get out of here.
Yes, he's going to be the offensive coordinator under RJ Windows. And you sort of put it in that same bucket, all the stuff that you have to do as a head coach. He built a phenomenal program in Stonebridge, obviously. Wanted to get back. And I think, his whole thing is, I just want to coach kids. I want to watch them practice, help them in practice. If I told somebody 30 times to run a play, the 31st time they're going to get it, and he's going to be excited. And, I think that's a lot of these older coaches that's their thinking. I just want to teach a kid how to do something well because I know this works. And, walk off the field with my arm around him and say, "Hey, great work out there at practice today. Let's hit it again tomorrow." And
Hey, Jason,
lose some of that, I
you
think,
said
as a head coach, the
Independence?
ability to do that.
You said he's going to be at Independence. Is that the school?
Independence, correct. Under RJ Windows, who was his
Okay.
defensive coordinator forever, so sort of flopping roles. So I think he's going to take the offensive reins over at Independence.
So all of a sudden you have a bunch of Prince William County coaches kind of sweating now that they got to prep for that single wing that he's going to put in. Because
Independence is moving up to
right?
6. So
Yeah.
Independence is class 6 now
Yeah.
in the new realignment. So yes, there could be some of that. So
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Independence is a huge school. It's over 2,000. They have a huge population that traditionally probably doesn't love football yet, but they'll get there. It is an interesting dynamic to put Independence in 6 with all those salty Prince William County teams. It'll be interesting also to see if Coach Mickey Thompson puts the single wing in at Independence. I would assume he would. That's what he loves. But when I interviewed him last year, he did say he would love to stay on at Stonebridge as an assistant for one of his sons, but he didn't think his sons would have the time to be the head coach. So this is probably the next best thing for him.
Because Independence will be in the district with Battlefield, Patriot, Gainesville. It'll be their district.
Correct. They will now be the only Class 6 team in Loudoun County because Freedom is back down to 5, and Champ, I believe, is back down
4.
to 4.
I think they're 4.
So, yeah.
I was talking to Kevin Weirin. He's the athletic director at Freedom South Riding, and I was telling him how lucky he was to be going down to 5. He's like, "Oh, no. That Class 6, Cedar Run is not that tough. You got 3 or 4 really tough teams." He's talking about all sports. But the bottom, they're just as weak as these Loudoun teams. And I'm like, "Coach, you've got 19 teams in those regions in 6B. Here in Loudoun, you have 9 teams. And like in basketball, 2 teams out of 9 go to state every year. I mean, this is an unbelievable change in South Freedom South Riding's fortunes." Jason, so the other 18, the other 17 high schools in Loudoun County, all the head coaches are coming back next year. Because remember last year we had the huge news that Mickey was stopping.
Yes, I believe so. I have not heard of any. Obviously, if somebody's going to step down, they're probably going to want to do it fairly soon, just for all fairness to the school, wouldn't be able to get a coach in. So I've not heard of any of the Western schools in the county, the Heritages or Loudoun Counties, Valleys, having any turnover. But sometimes that news is sometimes a little late to flow into me. So. But we'll see. I think they should have most of those coaches should be stable as we head into the year. But last summer was pretty eventful, so we'll have to see how the summer goes here.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's some really great underclassmen in Loudoun County for next year. We can get to that in a second. So Hayfield is going to be an interesting job because their freshmen and JV teams are both undefeated and they destroyed everybody. And obviously the varsity was unbelievable. So Overton leaves with most of his assistants. I think almost all of them are leaving with him. I'm not sure. So you got to figure some of those kids or most of those kids are going to come. I don't know. I don't want to speak for any of those kids. I just don't know whether they want to do that. But I would still think Hayfield always has athletes. They've been good in football even before Overton got there. Not this level of success, but they've always been pretty good in football. I would think that job would be a great job. I know they have a kid on the basketball team starting. He's a post player, but he's about 6'5", 6'6", great athlete. One of the football kids that came from Ireton. Some of these kids may want to stay and play basketball or whatever. They may have enjoyed their experience at Hayfield. So it's not a given that all these kids are going to leave Hayfield. As a matter of fact, I bet you, my guess is half of them will stay. We'll see. So I would think that job would be a great job. What do you guys think at Hayfield?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Again, I think it depends on the the number of kids that potentially stay, or if some of them do go to like a St. James or back to another school. Certainly it's a big community. To your point, their basketball team last decade. I mean, they've been phenomenal. So there's athletes roaming those halls. I do think it's a very attractive school. Now, the only fear I think maybe someone has is just is there too much of the Overton? I don't want to call it a cloud, but that situation is still hanging out. How many questions are you going to have to answer on day one as a head coach about the situation? Because that can drive you nuts. You want to come in and say, "Hey, new day, new era, new, but if everybody's pinging you about, hey, what do you think of the situation? That's tough. So
Wait,
that may play to people's heads.
back to our earlier conversation about dealing with non-football stuff. You're going to deal with non-football stuff day one of the job, right? So hopefully that would die down. But I think from a athletic, department standpoint and kind of that zone and that corridor with the athletes, I think it's a good job for sure. But yeah, it's definitely going to be more of a high profile, high focus job when that gets filled. So.
Well, I don't see how you can keep the sanction the second year if Overton's gone. I mean, I guess you can argue that you're punishing the administration at the school, but I think they should drop the sanction, and let them play and move forward. But I mean, I don't want to tell Fairfax County as a proud alum of Robinson High School, I don't want to tell Fairfax County how to do their job. But I would hope that they can start with the clean slate and let these kids have a great season. South County has a similar demographic to Hayfield. You got all kinds of different types of housing. I think you get like 12% African American. Got some tough kids in South County as well. They did not have a good year last year, but that could be a one-off. I would think that would be an extremely attractive job as well. But I guess the South County coach had left to go to Robinson because I think Coach Pannoni had replaced him. So maybe there's something going on at South County that maybe the job is not as easy as we would think.
Yeah, I think that's a good job as well. I mean, they got a history of winning for sure. I think it's been a good program over the years. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see who takes that job as well.
Yeah. Well, Jason, do you have any comment on South County or?
Well, I think it's a great job too. But again, I think your first foray into it's gonna, you're gonna have to answer some questions that don't relate to you. So that's you got to have a stomach for that, right? You've got to be able to come out the box and hey. Appreciate everything that went on, but we've got to turn the page. Let's think about the kids that are here. And most coaches understand how to do that, but it does take away from the execution of what you need to do on day one, the first 30 days, the first 60 days for sure. So
yeah, and look, you only go to high school once. You can't waste a whole lot of time. The team didn't do great last year, so at least they're not coming off an undefeated season, whereas the kids have they've shown they have a good chemistry and there's a lot at stake. I mean, now it seems like to me there is some room for growth there. Well, let's move on, and hopefully all these schools will get the coaches that they want. Let's just talk briefly off the cuff. When you think about some of the teams and what they're returning for next year, offhand, I know Madison was very experienced on defense. They had 9 of 11 kids. On defense, starters were seniors. Cale Yates, great quarterback, senior. Nisley, as Brian or Jason said earlier, senior. But we all know they have one of the best coaching staffs in Northern Virginia and certainly the state and area as well. So we're not worried about Madison. Whether they'll have that top end they've had the last couple of years is probably up for debate. But when you think, and I know the kid from Woodgrove is coming back. They have a 4-star. What's his name? God, I can't think of his name. Salmon. Connor Salmon.
Yes.
Jason, that's usually your job, so I'm going to watch you.
Yeah, I know. It's off season, Julian.
It's off season, and I live closer to Woodgrove than you do, so maybe that's my job as well. But when you look around, what do you think about teams initially? To look at for next season.
Yeah, for me, I think certainly in the Class 6, I don't see Madison making a big tail. They're so well coached. We always go back to their coaching as sort of the dynamic that keeps them in that consistency year after year. I see them being fine and going pretty deep in the playoffs, maybe challenging for a state title again. The Lake Braddocks, the Fairfaxes, they've had some really good teams the last few years. I think you'll see more of that. And again, I think it's, the coaching. So if you've got a coach that has been there and done that before and shown that, they're able to take a team to the playoffs, I could see some of that happening. Certainly talent as it leaves, and maybe you've got a young roster. It'll be harder for some of these teams. Independence, I mentioned earlier, I could see them now with, going, being in Class 6, some different looks from an assistant standpoint, maybe a different offense that some of the teams in Class 6 had historically not seen. We'll have to see if they've got the athletes to be able to execute on a single wing, if that indeed is what Coach Thompson runs. But something like that. And I think in your Prince William area, Brian can cover this a lot better than I can. But I think some of the teams historically that were the Battlefields, teams like the Gainesville, see them also being good again. I mean, Battlefield's had phenomenal regular season teams, just haven't been able to get over that hurdle. So that'll be something I always look for. Hey, can you get that next step in there, right? And get to maybe get a state title at some point. Otherwise, you've got to start thinking, okay, is that our ceiling? So
they're not quite the Bills though, because the Bills lose the final game. They lose earlier than that. So the drama doesn't build.
That's true.
Yeah. How about you, Brian?
I think from a Prince William County perspective on the western side, you're going to have the big three again. It's going to be Battlefield, Patriot, and Gainesville. Each of those programs have very deep freshman and JV squads, right? That traditionally are tied to their Gainesville Grizzlies youth program and everything. So they have the numbers. They invest a lot in the lower. The teams, the freshmen and JV teams, and they all have had successful, runs at that level. So I expect all of them to be pretty well in the running for next year. I think the big thing for like Patriot and Gainesville, they got to replace their starting quarterback and replace their starting running back. So those are big shoes to fill for sure.
That's Gainesville?
Yeah, Gainesville as well as Patriot. Jackson McCarter's off to JMU. Their quarterback, I can't remember where he just committed, but both quarterbacks for Gainesville and Patriot are off to the next level. So they got to replace both of those. On the eastern side, I think it's going to be Garfield again. I mean, Garfield was building something pretty good last year, and they got a lot of athletes. They got a new coaching staff, a lot of momentum there. I think Woodbridge is going to take a hit. Their starting quarterback just announced he's transferring to St. Francis. He was a sophomore quarterback, really athletic, big arm. So he's going to be leaving the Woodbridge. So they're going to have to fill that. And then you got the Forest Parks and Colgans of the world, right? That we'll see what the new coaching staffs are able to do with that and see if they can get some momentum going there. So yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. But it's going to be your usual suspects, I think, in Prince William County. It's going to be the Patriots, Gainesvilles, and Battlefields for sure.
Yeah. Brian,
yep.
Is Freedom Woodbridge, do they have a full schedule, coming up? Do they have a modified?
I don't know. Because they played that reduced schedule this past year, just a district schedule with 6 games or so. So it's kind of interesting, Jason, like all you heard about for 4 or 5 years was Freedom, Woodbridge. And then all of a sudden Coach O leaves for Hayfield and it's almost like they didn't exist. They had a coach, I think, came from somewhere out west, right? And he didn't have local ties, and so yeah, that program is going to be a struggle. I just don't hear much chatter about them at all.
Yeah, I was just curious if they were able to get a full schedule. So, and it may not make sense to do a full schedule again. Who knows?
I think all this focus on Coach Overton and their blowouts are everywhere, and it's really a problem in high school sports, and it's going to keep kids from wanting to try out for the football team, and it's going to make kids transfer. Because if you're a great football player, do you really want to be in Freedom if no one else is going to play football? So they really need, and I complain about this all the time, and no one ever listens, but they got to take teams like Justice and Lewis and Freedom, put them with the Brentsville, the smaller schools. Let them have a chance to have a nice experience on the football field. I mean, every year, getting their brains beat out by the Gainesvilles and the Hayfields of the world, and these big, not necessarily Hayfields of the world, Madisons or these big schools, they're never going to have a chance to compete. So I don't even know why we're not trying to be creative and trying to give these kids a meaningful experience. The good thing about Loudon is you do have a little bit more parity, because most of the schools have very similar demographics, because they're all basically new schools. So you definitely have your Stone Bridges, and I definitely think the northwestern part of the county is going to have, I think, Woodgrove and Loudon Valley. Those schools are going to be powerful in all sports because they're getting growth and wealth in that part of the county and stuff. But I think they got to find a way to make these kids have a good experience. I do want to say Brian brought up a good point about Lake Braddock. I know they had 100 kids shot for freshmen last year, or more than that. They had 2 different freshman teams. Coach Docker does a great job. Lake Braddock is going to be, and I think they were young this year as well. They're going to be very competitive. Woodgrove was they had some youth this year as well. They're going to be tough next year. I think Briar Woods, that class had been starting since their freshman year. I think they're going to graduate a lot of people. And Brian, Jason will know better than me, but I love that coach. So I think they're in good hands, and he'll just rebuild it again. So I'm excited to see what emerges. I know Herndon had a great year, but they lost their coach. They have a new coach. We'll see how that goes. They finally turned that around. Then he left. We forgot to mention Herndon. But any final comments on other teams you may have forgotten to mention the first time around?
Give you something here. There was one weekend last fall when I was sick, and I got bored, so I started looking at all high school Virginia football scores for I think it was week 7, so maybe I only got it through 6 weeks of the regular season. How many scores ended up over 35 points, which means in the second half you would have a running clock. And this was across all the states. So I looked at all classifications, sort of added them up, from week 1 to week 6. And the number, I was shocked. It was about 38% of all final scores across the state of Virginia in classes 1 through 6 ended up with a running clock. And those are the ones that just finished with a plus 35. They might have had a game somewhere where you were up by 40 and you cut it back to, to 34 at some point. So I didn't even pick up on those because I did have to look at the flow of the game. But 39% ended up with a running clock. To me, that's an issue. You've got a lot of good teams and a lot of teams that just are not competitive. And I think for the sanctity of high school football in Virginia and the public school system, something's going to have to give there. You have a lot of unbalanced, uncompetitive, unattractive games. And, those programs, your Freedom Woodbridges that are, going to struggle to even field a team, that's going to continue, Brian. I mean, that's a hard cycle to get out of, and ones that, so I'm concerned about something like that. I was shocked at that number. I was thinking maybe 20%. It was almost double that. So
that's a great stat, Jason, because I think, me being involved in the youth football ranks and coaching and running a youth football league and everything, I saw the numbers decline tremendously across Northern Virginia, just flat out football participation numbers, right? Like the amount of teams we'd be able to field probably 10 years ago was drastically different, 6, 7 years later, whether it was concussions, whether it was everybody's, doing all kinds of other stuff besides sports and things like that. So you saw that extend into the high school ranks, where nowadays you barely ever see freshman teams fielded by high schools, right? And it's hit or miss with JV teams, and the schools that are putting out 100 kids, that's few and far between. Usually you're dealing with programs that have 40, 50 kids and trying to make a varsity roster, cobble together a JV. And that's why you end up getting kind of the lopsided, kind of scores like that. And it's just bad for the game. So I don't know the answer. And I remember, Julian, you having a podcast about the super conference, but the same thing has to probably be done with some of the schools that continue to struggle. Because what you don't want to do is see the Manassas Parks and Parkview stories of the world where they shut down their football programs. That's not good for the game, right? So every time you see a 78-0 loss, that always kind of equates to that program may not exist 2 years from now. And that's not good for the game. So I don't know the answer, but I would love to figure out or have somebody really kind of focus on that.
It's almost at an emergency level, but no one does anything. I mean, we accept these blowouts. 100. Phoebus won a game with 100 points this year. There was a couple of ridiculous blowouts. I know when teams played Hayfield, they would stall. They would let the clock run. They were finding ways to stall, and I can't believe there's no effort to change this. When I interviewed the Remember the Titans guys, or no, I interviewed one of the coaches at one point, Ali Johnson, and he got to TC Williams the year after the Remember the Titans season, and they didn't get. I said, "What happened, Coach? Well, how come you guys didn't do well last year?" He's like, "What are you talking about? In our district, there was Stewart, there was Annandale, everybody was great. The next year we lost one game by 2 points, and we were eliminated. Every single team in our district could beat us. Annandale," he says, "we were a great team, and that team was every bit as good, and we didn't even make it into the regional tournament." So, and it was the same way when I was in school, the Northern District. My senior year, I didn't play my senior year, but we had Chris Warren, NFL Hall of Fame nominee. We lost one game and didn't go to region. We were great. And the TC Williams teams, they were amazing, but everybody was great. And we're not going back to those days anymore. because as Brian mentioned, the youth programs aren't as deep. They're not going to feed the schools equally. The demographics are too unique at all the different schools. They weren't like that when I was growing up. But we can do other things to give these kids a better experience, and we're going to have to do that, or football is going to continue to bleed athletes and coaches and everything. But anyway, well, look, guys. Any final words? I appreciate your time as always. It's great getting together. There's actually a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting coming into the year. Is there going to be more drama, some other new drama that we're going to be talking about, or is it going to be back to talking football? So we'll see.
Maybe we'll talk about Hayfield some more for old time's sake.
I think it's
yeah.
No, I think it's Julian. It's great to pick up a little off-season football talk. I think we let it rest, and we're all into basketball, the Super Bowl coming up, things like that. But we've all got a passion for high school football, obviously, and if we can keep it alive, keep the heartbeat of some of it alive. I do think Brian, your point about, and Julian, something has to change a little bit. Maybe it's shrinking the classifications down to 4. Maybe there's some 8-man football teams. I don't know those answers either. There's probably a lot of things that could be done potentially to make the games more competitive so that kids enjoy them. My fear is that kids don't enjoy what they're doing because they're sort of running out there because their dad said to, and they're getting their brains kicked in every night. How fun can that be? It can't be. So you lose passion for something, and then that's a life lesson that, if you don't like it, just move on to the next. So these life lessons, I think, are being eroded a little bit, and that's something that concerns me long term as a father, and just somebody that enjoys competitive, but enjoys winning and losing at times, right? So,
Jason, you go first in 2 sentences or less. Give me a winner for the Super Bowl.
2 sentences or less. Philadelphia will win. It is impossible to win 3 in a row. It's never happened. That is why. So if Belichick and Brady couldn't do it, I don't think Kansas City can do it.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I'm Eagles. I can't stand the Eagles, but I'm a Commander Skins fan for sure. But I'm Eagles for this weekend.
Well, I don't like Eagles fans on Facebook. They're almost as bad as the Cowboys fans. But in Andy Heck, a buddy, my guy I played basketball against, is an O-line coach at the Chiefs. So I do cheer for Andy, but I think it would be good for football. For the Eagles to win. I think a lot of football fans are getting a little bit bitter about, I don't know if it's true or not, but people feel that the Chiefs are getting preferential treatment from the officials. I have no idea, but maybe it'll be good to have a new champion, even though it has to be the Eagles. So they're definitely a great team. I mean, my God, they were so impressive against the Redskins. So they're definitely good enough, but whether they can win that game against, if Mahomes has the ball in his hands with under 2 minutes to go, I guarantee you the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. So it's just a matter of whether the Eagles could avoid that situation. So
that's right.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, look, I appreciate it. Sorry for going over, but I'm sure we'll be talking. It'll be as Jason said, it'll be football. It'll be at least the preseason before we know it, and we'll be talking again. So
all right, guys.
Thanks for having us, Julian. See you.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Have a good day now. Thanks.